Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's online webinar hosted by the Homeopathic Certification. My name is Diva Rizvi, and I am the chair of the CHC Public Relations Committee. The mission of the CHC is to advance the homeopathic profession by certifying individuals who meet and maintain high standards of professional and ethical competence in classical homeopathy. Webinars like this one are part of how we support certified practitioners and the profession as a whole. Before we begin, a brief disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed by our speakers are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the CHC. Today's session is titled Real-World Homeopathy, Building Scientific Credibility Through Clinical Outcomes. And we are honored to have Dr. Seema Mahesh with us. Dr. Mahesh is a renowned classical homeopath from Bangalore, India, and research director at the International Academy of Classical Homeopathy in Greece. With over 30 publications in peer-reviewed journals, she has lectured internationally on immunology and chronic inflammation, serves on the editorial board for Sage Clinical Medicine Insights case reports, and was recently elected to Sigma Xi, the Scientific Research Honor Society. In this webinar, Dr. Mahesh will share the value of case reports and case series in clinical practice and how research publications can strengthen evidence-based homeopathy, guide future studies, and translate theory into real-world practice. Before we begin, a quick reminder, please keep your cameras off and microphones muted unless asking a question, but we will leave that for the end of the presentation. You may ask questions via chat, the raise hand function, or by unmuting yourself at the end of the presentation. This session is being recorded and will be available by request. It's my pleasure now to welcome Dr. Seema Mahesh. Please take it away, Seema.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the introduction, and I'm thankful to CHC for this opportunity. To begin with, let me start by sharing my screen. All right, so this is Alonissos in Greece, where we all go to study with Professor Vithoulkas, and it's a moonlit night on the sea there. So with this beautiful picture, I want to start my topic today, which is a real-world homeopathy, building scientific credibility through clinical outcomes. So what exactly are we talking about, or what are we going to look at today is basically real-world homeopathy. You must have heard a lot about medical research and how research is important for the building of medical evidence and evidence-based medicine and lots of these words. But for homeopathy, why it is important to stick to real-world scenario is what I'm going to be bringing. So homeopathy is practiced by you and me can indeed become evidence for homeopathy, is what I'm trying to say. So this is my job, to bring forth the evidence from everyday practice. So let me bring to you today the power of case reports and series, which are the true representatives of classical homeopathy, and at the same time can also act as research evidence. So let's start with some background on case reports and series. As I go through the slides, the ones, these small snippets that I have posted are actually classic case reports through which medicine made advancements in very significant ways. So it also shows how important case reports can be. For example, this one is the discovery of thalidomide causing congenital abnormalities, which this connection was not made before this particular case report was made by W.G. McBride. So going back to our topic, case reports and series, what are they? So basically, case reports are detailed reports of the symptoms, signs, diagnosis, treatment, follow-up, everything that relates to a patient in a certain condition, every small detail. It's a reporting of such details. And if there are more than, if there are three or more than three reports, it makes a case series. And they usually, the significance of case reports is that they usually describe an unusual or a novel occurrence, and as such, they remain one of the cornerstones of medical progress to identify some unusual thing that has not been identified, and to further take the study to scientific bigger projects. Some reports contain in the case reports, you can give an extensive review of the relevant literature on the topic as well. So this is what you're going to be writing when you write a case report or series. Now, this is an important part of understanding the research scenario, and that is the research pyramid. And if you look at where case reports and series are, they're quite low. They're not very high in the research pyramid. This pyramid, as you go higher in this pyramid, the quality of evidence increases because the risk of bias decreases as you go higher. That is why case reports or case studies are not very high. The highest is, of course, systematic reviews and meta-analyses of RCTs, randomized controlled studies. And as you go down, they get lesser and lesser, quality becomes lesser and lesser, and case reports and studies are not very high. However, so this is because, as I already said, this is because of lack of control. Like, you're not comparing to a control. You have a lot of confounders. You have a lot of biases that can creep in. There is no real strict conditions under which you're conducting the experiments. So there's also the danger or the risk that what you're finding in a particular case may not be generalizable. So it might be just that one case. So all this makes, in the research pyramid, it puts the case studies down. And usually we use it as an anecdotal evidence to discover new things, new trends, unusual trends, to find some new diagnosis or presentation or effect of treatment. Now, when I say anecdotal, it means that it's stories, right? So how important can stories be? That's how research looks at the scientific world looks at case reports and series. But even the research, the paradigm accepts that it's a very important teaching aid because it gives you details that a bigger study cannot give you. So if it is that low in research evidence pyramid, then what is the importance of case reports? On the side, you can see the reporting of pneumocystis carinii, which is a finding in the AIDS patients, which was not very well known till then. This identified, and eventually they identified as something that occurs in AIDS patients. So coming back to importance of case reports and series are indispensable study designs and need to be given more consideration. Why? They have valuable lessons to teach us as they represent the real world scenario. You see, the highest so-called level of evidence is from randomized control studies, but all randomized control studies are conducted in a very specific conditions, in very specific conditions. They are designed and executed under very strict controlled conditions. So what happens when such a drug that has gone through the RCT is released out into the world, where real patients with all kinds of confounders take them, these confounders are not accounted for during the tests. So what happens out there, of course, that's called, that is also part of the clinical research, but they can be in for quite a few surprises because they've not taken the real world scenario into account. But case reports, on the other hand, are observations of what's happening out there. So they can really teach you very valuable lessons. And as I said again and again, it's going to be repeated that they lead to discovery of new disease or phenomenon and recognition of unusual presentations, along with the understanding of effect of therapy in unique situations. Now, this particular approach or understanding or observation is especially relevant when considering a therapeutic system with individuality as its paradigm. And that's where case reports become very important for homeopathy. This case report is Wegener's granulomatosis. So in homeopathy, individualization is the basis in classical homeopathy, which means N means the sample size in a research study, okay? So the N is always going to be 1, right? So in such a scenario, it gives us that individual's minute details, okay? If the results are, such minute details are essential, if these results are to be replicated in practice, which is the ultimate goal of research, really. Like, why do we conduct research? Is to be able to replicate that into practice, right? So you have already observed these minute details. You're reporting these minute details so a person can learn and employ them in their own practice. So because they depict the real world scenario, they bring forth the challenges as well during the process of individualization and what the effects, result from this process and what outcomes are expected, but what happened. So all the challenges that a homeopath faced during the treatment of such a condition in a particular individual are brought forth. So a person can learn, which is most important for homeopaths, rather than the RCT design, which is, well, you may say individualization, but usually randomized controlled trials mean a remedy used for a certain condition, or individualizing and then studying the effect of the individualization for a particular condition, but in a particular time period. And that's the problem, which we can discuss later if you want. But individualization being the basis, case reports will help you understand better the challenges and the outcomes. Mass studies may not be able to bring forth these nuances. So like I said. But the most important relevance of case report and series to homeopathy is that it is a very accessible study design. It is research evidence and it is very accessible to any clinician who takes interest. You don't need any big infrastructure or funding or even specialized training. You just need to interest yourself in the right documentation methods in order to present a case in an acceptable, scientifically acceptable way. So that is what I'm going to show, a little bit of it. So if you're interested, you can start off after this webinar. So what does it entail? If you see in this case report on the side, it's Kaposi sarcoma, again, something that was later connected to AIDS. It was initially discovered by case reports. Okay, coming back to writing a good quality case report. So experts say that if you properly select and report a case, it stands better chance of publication in high impact journals than even a clinical trial. Now, why are we running behind publication in good impact, high impact journals? Is because if you want to show that a particular evidence exists, first of all, and this evidence is something that can be considerable, that is considerable, and that has the qualities of a scientific therapy. If you want to establish homeopathy in this manner, publishing the evidence from peer review, after peer review, is the most important requirement. So that's why we are behind these, publications. Case reports usually are retrospective. However, you may decide that the next case of this particular condition comes, I'm going to do a case report and do a protocol of how it is going to be done. And, that is even more, it carries even more weightage when you do it prospectively. Very rarely done, but it does. If you're interested, you can do it. So that's another way of increasing the quality. And any case report could have a reasonable chance of publication, even if it is not novel, as long as it was authentic, led to an incremental advance in medicine, or carries an educational value. So when you plan a case report, make sure if it is not novel, at least it has a lesson to teach the medical world at large, and to homeopaths in particular. Now, how does one assess the methodological? This is from the reviewer's point of view. If you understand that, your case report will become stronger. How is the methodological quality assessed? So there is something called risk of bias. ROB is the common term we use. Risk of bias that is assessed for every case report in the following domains. First of all, selection. Is there a risk of bias in the selection process of a case? You have selected a particular case because it represents a very unique situation, unique treatment, and outcome of treatment. So you have only, it limits the generalizability of the lessons learned from that case report, or the observations made during that case report are not going to be applicable to a large number of cases, which means you have selected a very niche kind of thing. That's usually not accepted for publication unless it is a very novel thing that nobody else has observed so far. The second bias that is assessed is the ascertainment. So have you used a lot of subjective methods to ascertain the outcome of a case? This is a very big risk in homeopathic case reporting, because a lot of the reporting is about the clinical improvement, which is not objectively measured in any way. The patient was feeling this way, now the patient is feeling better. These things are not acceptable. You need as objective a method as possible to ascertain the improvement or the changes or even the worsening, whatever you were talking about. You need objective methods of ascertaining the outcome. Causality. are there any alternative explanations to the effect, or is the causality definitely being established? For example, suppose you have a case where multiple therapies were used, supplements and emotion code and craniosacral and also homeopathy. How are you going to attribute causality to homeopathy? This is the question. Okay, and it becomes even more questionable to the reviewers when conventional medicine is being used alongside homeopathy. So they will never attribute it to homeopathy, is something I have learned in a hard way. They will even accept self-resolution, but not homeopathic attribution. So you have to make sure that you have the absolute proof that what outcome resulted from homeopathy. Then finally, the bias they will check for is reporting bias. Are you only reporting what went right? Are you only reporting what went wrong? Because you believe in a certain, or you don't believe in a certain method. So this is actually a very big problem for homeopathy, because though we report fairly, editors will not accept. Right in the beginning, even before they send for peer review, we faced rejections saying your manuscript does not meet the the criteria of our journal. This does not necessarily reflect upon the quality of your manuscript. That's the standard statement you will get. So there is publication or reporting bias there, which you have to face. But from your part of from your part, don't succumb to this and don't get into the um, problem creation be the solution. So how do you make sure you are taking care of these risks of bias in a case report? You have to ask these questions. Okay, first of all, does the report have predictive value? So the problem is that anecdotal reports may turn out to be false on subsequent investigation rather than genuine indicators of the link between intervention and effect. So like I said, be very sure that the causality is attributable absolutely. So it can predict it that this therapy can result in this outcome. Is the causality clear? Right? The same thing. Then is it plausible? This is a problem for homeopathy, but you should try and explain with whatever latest literature is available, try and explain the plausible biological mechanism, right? We're not there yet, but we can try. Is there enough information to provide detailed appraisal of evidence? Don't hide any information, is what they're saying. Put everything out there, make it very transparent. Suppose the patient was taking supplements, do mention that and make sure you address that as a limitation for, attributing causality. And you must make it very, very open and transparent. Don't hide anything. And then the last question you have to ask is there a problem from using the data from reports outweighing the perceived benefits? So there's a trade-off between, giving, like, for example, I'll tell you my own experience. We published a paper on acute appendicitis. And one of the questions the reviewers asked was, is it safe to put this information out there that, homeopaths can handle acute appendicitis, which is a surgical emergency? So you have to address that. We don't want people believing that homeopathy can address acute appendicitis and start treating it, without a surgical surgeon's opinion. So we had to add this disclaimer, so to say, that Indian homeopaths are medically trained and we know what we're doing. So this is not to be attempted without medical training, had to be put into the manuscript. Otherwise, that's what the last question is about. So if you make this data public, is there a problem that can come through or it can cause, which can outweigh the benefit of putting this information out there? So you have to weigh this and put it out there. Okay. Now, once you have answered these questions and you have taken care of all these risks of bias, that's when your case report can be considered as high quality case report. Sorry, something's. Lately, this is important. Lately, experts are going back to giving case reports the importance they're due. They recommend quality standards that will ensure the best possible evidence from case reports. Systematic reviews of such quality case reports will eventually be of help in gaining deeper insight. That's actually my next project. So to actually, practically write a case report with these guidelines, are there any guidelines? I'm going to show you a few which you can use and write high quality case reports and series. This case report is of Pegg's disease. Right. So the first tool comes from Joanna Briggs Institution, and they have given the critical appraisal tool for quality case reports. So when you write a case report, answer these questions so you know your case report is high enough in quality. Were the patient's demographic characteristics clearly described? Why? Because demographics are important because certain races, certain regions, certain familial, influences change the way certain diseases appear. So you have to have this demographic characteristics clearly stated. Was the patient's history clearly described and presented as a timeline? Usually you write a timeline or in words, but it should be very clearly written to show the whole history of the patient, the medical history, of course. Was the current clinical condition of the patient on presentation clearly described? Were diagnostic tests or assessment methods and the results clearly described? Were the interventions or the treatment procedures clearly described? Was the post-intervention clinical condition, what happened, clearly described? Were adverse events, this is very important, adverse events or unanticipated events identified and described? If they were not, then you have to make sure you state it as such. No harmful events or adverse events or unexpected events occur during the course of the treatment. You have to make sure you mention that. Does the case report provide takeaway lessons in your winding up in the discussion part? You must make sure the reader gets to know what he's supposed to take away from this case report. So if you have addressed these issues, your case report is of a good quality. The same thing for case series is slightly different. I'll just read it through. You can take screenshots of the screen and it's fine. Were there clear criteria for, in case series you have more than 3. So why did you include these particular cases in this case series? So you have to make sure there is a common thread between them. So why did you include that? Clarity should be there. Was the condition measured in a standard, reliable way for all participants, including one patient in one certain measure, another patient in another way? There shouldn't be such heterogeneity. There should be some homogeneity in the way the patients are evaluated. Okay, so that has to be there. Were valid methods used for identification of the condition for all participants included in the case series? For example, if you are giving a diagnostic criteria for a particular condition, make sure it is done for all the patients. Did this case series have consecutive inclusion of participants? So this is something you have to mention if it is not. Are you taking consecutively as these cases come up, without any exclusion in between? You are picking and choosing the cases that the patients that you're including in the case series, or you're consecutively without any conditions of their outcome, you're just including them in the case series. So this has to be clarified. Very few case series clarify it, but it's good if you do. Was there clear reporting of the demographics of the participants, again, like in the case report? Was there clear reporting of the clinical information? Were the outcomes or follow-up results of cases clearly reported? Was there clear reporting of the presenting sites? Where all from did these patients come? So was it only this particular clinic or research center or this hospital, or there were multiple hospitals? You have to clarify, give proper information about where they are coming from. And if in case series you can do statistical analysis, if it is done, was it appropriate? Like, I don't know how many of you are even conversant with the idea of statistical analysis and research. If you are, then make sure the appropriate analysis is made according to the research question. What are you trying to look at? So for homeopathy, this is a very important tool. It's called Home Case Checklist, which is an extension of the CARE checklist. CARE, C-A-R-E, is a case report checklist that gives you a proper checklist. You tick it and you've written the report, right? But this is an extension called Home Case Checklist. Let's look at this checklist. So the CARE guidelines is given on the left, and the extra things that you have to take care for homeopathy are given on the right. So it should have a title with the word case report in it. Keywords, if they are mesh keywords, MESH, mesh keywords, it's good, but it's not required by CARE. Abstract, you can have a structured abstract or an unstructured, depending on the journal you're submitting to. Structured means it has the headings: introduction, case report, discussion, or conclusion. If it's unstructured, it is just one single paragraph without any such differentiation. Introduction should briefly summarize why this case is unique or what it is trying to teach if it is not unique. And of course, with medical literature, references. Referencing is a whole different chapter altogether. It's something that you learn. If you're interested, you have to learn how to reference. That's a different thing. Next, you go to patient information. De-identified. Nowhere in your case report or series should the patients be identifiable. Okay. If you're presenting, say, documents like MRIs or any such documents, make sure you've blacked out all the identifying information and only the report should be presented. De-identified demographic and other patient information, main concerns, symptoms of the patient, medical, family, and psychosocial history, including genetic information, what we call family medical history, relevant past interventions and their outcomes, clinical findings, relevant physical examination and other clinical findings, timeline, relevant data from this episode of care organized as a timeline, either a figure or a table or a flow chart, what happened to the patient. Diagnostic assessment. What methods were used? Was it just physical examination? Was it blood work? Was it imaging? All these details with the documentation. Was there any diagnostic challenge? Like, did you have differentiating problem? Like, it was not very clear whether this was such a diagnosis. This kind of challenges can come through. You have to make sure you've addressed that, the differential diagnosis. Prognostic characteristics when applicable. What is expected conventionally in such a case? Okay. Now, here for homeopathy, in the clinical findings, you must also write homeopathic symptoms used for decision, usually repertorization. Next, you have to talk about therapeutic invention. Care just gives you type of information, what was it for pharmacological, was it surgical, preventative, how it was given, the dosage, strength, duration, changes in the interventions with explanation. But in homeopathy, you're going to write the type of homeopathy, what kind of homeopathy, individualized, formula, single, multiple constituents, isopathy, etc. Make sure it's very clearly stated. The nomenclature, that is, the name of the remedy should be given in the right method, in the right format. Then if it is some patent medication, make sure you're giving the component, the composition of that particular patent medication, what manufacturers and what potency, of course, scale, whether it is Korsakoff or Hahnemannian, and then the galenic form, the potency. So these details must be, if you look at a standard case report, homeopathic case report, you will see all this. So it shouldn't be very difficult. This is that you make sure it's there. Then take care of the follow-up and outcomes, right? Clinician and patient assessed outcomes when appropriate. Important follow-up diagnostics. If you've diagnosed in a particular way, make sure it is followed up. Intervention adherence. Did the patient continue to take the treatment? Was it tolerable? The treatment was tolerable? Or were there any adverse events and did the patient stop the treatment? These details must be written. For homeopathy, you have to add the objective evidence if applicable. Usually you will need some objective evidence. If nothing, at least a visual analog scale of the pain, of the depression, these things. So at least clinical assessment scales should be used, if not actual imaging and blood work and these things. Did homeopathic aggravation occur? This is a very important point. Make sure you mention that. Possible causal attribution of changes explicitly assessed and discussed. Whether you can attribute the changes to homeopathic treatment. Why you expect this remedy to have had this effect? Was it expected or was it unexpected? The details are given below. The causal attribution, what I just said, whether you are going to attribute the effect of the treatment to the outcome, is done by a specific checklist. I will show you that next. It's called Modified Naranjo Criteria or Monarch table for homeopathy. I will show you how, by completing that table, you can actually say this effect was brought about by homeopathy. Okay. Next, you must make sure you are, discussing the strengths, the limitations in your approach to this case, discussion of the relevant medical literature in relation to this particular condition, what was usually seen, what is seen specifically in this particular case, why it's different, and what is the primary takeaway? What are you expecting the readers to understand from this case report? Patient perspective is a very important thing. If you can get the patient to write a short paragraph of their own experience during the treatment, what they felt, how they felt before, how, why they chose homeopathy, for example, and why they did not go for, say, surgery or something, and did they find the expected results where they are today. Very short, not long. And that's very valuable testimony, so to say. Then informed consent is the most important part. And this should be taken right in the beginning, not in the end. You just, given give it in the end, that's all. But even before you start writing a case report and before you even start drafting their reports and these things and preparing, make sure you have written informed consent of your patients to publish the case details and their reports, whichever your relevant reports that you're using, and especially if you're using photographs and videos. We do in India, it's easy because people are more trusting and they're ready to give the photos and videos. I think it's very difficult in the West, but at least for the reports, MRIs and blood work, you can ask them, and they do make very good evidence. Now, looking at the modified Naranjo criteria for assessing causal attribution of clinical outcome to homeopathic intervention, or the monarch table. Behind is the case report. Okay, I can't read it, sorry. So let's look at the domains that we're going to look at in the monarch table. You see, it's this particular table takes into account the process of homeopathic cure. Never use the word cure in research papers. Always use resolution, improvement, betterment, anything but the word cure, okay? But since we're talking in a homeopathic audience here, we can use it. So during the process of homeopathic cure, what we see usually are taken as the domains here. And you have to answer whether this did occur in the case or this did not. If it did occur, there is a certain marking. If it did not occur, there is a certain marking. And eventually, you have to total, give the total in the case. What is the total? And you have to give out of the 13 marks here, this much of was the score for this particular case. So is it readily acceptable as outcome from homeopathy, or there is some doubt about whether the effect was from homeopathy or not? Be very transparent about it. They will still publish it, don't worry. So the first domain, was there an improvement in the main symptom or condition for which the homeopathic medicine was prescribed? Simple. Second, did the clinical improvement occur within a plausible time frame relative to the drug intake? I took the remedy today and 3 years later something happened. It's, questionable. It should be in a plausible time frame. Was there an initial aggravation of symptoms? You see, what is expected will go on with plus, 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 and then there is minus, minus, and zeros. Did the effect encompass more than the main symptom or condition? That is, where other symptoms are, ultimately improved or changed, which we expect. Did overall well-being improve? Direction of cure, did some symptoms improve in the opposite order of their development? Direction of cure, did any of this occur from organs of more importance to organs of less importance, from deeper to more superficial, from top downwards? Did old symptoms reappear temporarily during the course of treatment? Are there any alternate causes, that this could have happened? Was the health improvement confirmed by any objective evidence? Are you giving any objective evidence for the improvement? Did repeat dosing, if conducted, create similar clinical improvement? This is one point that I'm not happy with, but the rest of it is very, very relevant to homeopathic cure. So if this scores high on this table, you can safely say the effect was from homeopathic treatment. So like I said, provide a long enough follow-up. For example, you have a case of rheumatoid arthritis, you're not going to give a case report of, say, 3 months follow-up and 6 months and say everything was fine. No, you need to give long enough according to the disease that you're presenting. Provide the previous studies on the same topic, like what was done till then, how your case report fits into this particular, environment of the studies. Do explain the importance of the case report in the context of these references, like I said. Do use the guidelines and checklist to ensure, like the checklist that I gave you, to ensure high quality case reports. Use the monarch table to show that it is because of homeopathy. Include a logical explanation of the response, why this happened, what resulted in the discussion, and acknowledge the limitations of your report. Next, don'ts. Don't claim efficacy of a treatment with a case report. You cannot, because it's a single case report. In this particular case, homeopathy benefited the patient. That's all you can say. You cannot claim efficacy of the treatment. Don't doctor the response. Don't do all kinds of photoshopping and things like that. Don't alter images. Don't forget to obtain written, informed consent. Don't attribute changes to treatment without evidence. It won't be accepted, but don't do it. Don't forget to research about auto resolution in every condition that you're presenting and why your case was not auto resolution. You have to make sure that is addressed. Don't use old references, keep it to less than 5 years. Don't ramble on. The more precise, more succinct you are in research papers, the better it is. Don't go on and on and on with your descriptions. But above all, above everything else, first and foremost, there is no substitute for clinical expertise. Unless your clinical expertise is where it should be, your case report will not be what it should be. The ISEH story, very quickly going through this, because I think we may be approaching the time. That's me presenting the posters everywhere. So Professor George Vithoulkas, the director of ISEH, has always recognized case reports and series as the cornerstone of homeopathic research. He has encouraged well-trained classical homeopaths to document and publish these reports in peer-reviewed journals of repute. Eventually, a research team has taken shape under his guidance, working to create quality evidence for homeopathy. These case reports and series have been presented not just in homeopathic, but in conventional medical conferences. All these are from conventional medical conferences where our case reports, our papers, posters were presented. So far, we have had publications. These are all pictures from our published case reports and series. 15 disciplines, 35 case reports or series involving over 54 authors. That's the number at the moment. And you can see that our disciplines, the 15 disciplines that we have gone to, some of them I have listed here, there's a wide variety of disciplines that we are covering. Now, this is something important. Even, in the end, what is the effect? What is the impact of case reports and series is what I want to bring to you today. For the reader, a lay person reading these case reports and series, what is there for them? Evidence that homeopathy works in that particular condition, and maybe there is an alternative way, the suggestion to the reader. And clarity about classical or individualized homeopathic approach. What exactly does that entail to the patient? What will they go through? These details are available to the one interested to look and explore the alternative way. I'll give you an example from my own email. This person says that my son has syringomyelia problem and has been operated on once in 2016. Although the cyst in the spine disappeared after the first surgery, there is again a collection of cysts in the spine. Doctors suggest repeat surgeries as the shunt gets clogged frequently. I got an article from one of my friends that there are some medications in homeopathy which can help the problem. So can you please review? They did eventually come to the clinic. So for a layperson, it gives the right idea about homeopathy. You see the impact. The popular tabloid Daily Mail from UK discussed these two papers of ours in their, in their newspaper, so to say, online newspaper. About one was about the vitiligo, the other about psoriasis. So this is the impact for the layperson. It's not insignificant. What is there for the researchers? If you look at the impact on research itself, while case reports are anecdotal, they keep saying, they do serve as food for future research. They can provide new insights, like I said. So what is the impact? If you look at just my Google Scholar profile and look at the citations, you will see how many citations have happened in the past few years. And just in the last, since 2019, I have had 508 citations. And most of the time, I'm doing only case reports and series, not even doing fancy RCTs and observational studies. Next, what is there for a homeopath to learn from these? Let's give examples from our own case reports. You will learn details about handling a specific pathology, strategies to prescription, what strategy was used in a particular case, dosage, evolution of the case over time with details of how it was managed, especially the challenges faced during the management and what solutions were applied. Then application of homeopathic theory in practice. You will not see this anywhere else. You will see it in case reports, how the theory was actually applied. Let's look at this application of theory part, which is very important and interesting to us. The whole organism and not just the local pathology. We keep saying that, but do you see any evidence for that? Now, if you look at this case, which is a case of glioma, a brain tumor case treated with homeopathy, you will see that the individualized homeopathic therapy was based on the fact that she developed the tumor after taking care of her husband, a sick husband for a long time, which is cocculus. So we never really considered just the brain tumor, but the whole person's experience, stress, why a person goes through, why a person develops a particular pathology. The evidence is here. The same in another case, we saw cervical intraepithelial neoplasia, which is a pre-cancerous state for cervical cancer. This was, if you look at the reports, initially there was, what happened? Atypical squamous cells of indeterminate significance, and there was also positive HPV DNA. Okay, but after treatment, it is negative for intraepithelial lesion or malignancy, and no HPV. HPV is human papilloma virus of the high risk type was not detected. And this was again the approach of whole person and not just the cervical erosion or cervical pathology. Now, we keep saying that when you treat, the pathology shifts from deeper organs to superficial. Is there any evidence for that? Now look at this case of a cancer in a child. When treated with homeopathy, surfaces to the skin and what the child presents at this point. the Herring's law of cure. It's a little difficult to watch, I'm warning you, but this is when cancer shifts, cures and shifts to skin, what do you expect? This girl had a rare combination of embryonal carcinoma and immature teratoma, and usually children do not survive beyond 5 years. This is in 2010. She is still alive and well, a very healthy girl. And we followed up the case for 9 years, repeating the cancer markers and the scans every year for 9 years after she was completely, fine. Every day, the skin is getting worse. If you see the upper body is all affected, but you look at her legs are still okay. And sorry, I told you it's a little difficult to watch, but that's how the girl presented after cancer was cured. And now she's completely better in the top part. Look at her legs. Legs are affected now. We talk about theory, we can see them in case reports if it is practiced right. The same thing you will see here. Initial presentation, after graphitis, and then the face is clearing, but the trunk gets worse, and eventually the whole body is better, right? So you see evidence, you have evidence in the form of case reports and series. Return of old suppressed conditions. In this case of renal failure, the whole thing is just basically renal failure. The patient stopped dialysis, okay, and was fine. The kidney function started improving, but she brought out old suppressed eczema. We talk about this in theory, you see it as evidence in case reports. Same pathology yields different outcomes based on level of health of the patient, right? Level of health is something Professor Vithoulkas has taught us. It's a good concept to understand. So if you look at this spectrum of psoriasis, you will see that each patient's depth of pathology and improvement time required, medicines required, and the level and the comorbidities and everything differs, and the same pathology will require different remedies, different approach, different strategies. Acute and do I have time or shall I wind up?
I think we still have time, Seema, just because
okay, just a couple more slides. Okay,
took some time away from you.
So another theory that we keep telling is that acute inflammation or fever is a good hallmark of good health, and if it comes during treatment of chronic condition, it is a very good sign. We keep saying that, but what is the evidence? So if you look at this graph, it is basically the score. It's called SCORAD, the atopic dermatitis score of different patients at beginning and after an acute with high fever. Every time there is a high fever, the dermatitis actually becomes better. There is objective evidence through scoring of the atopic dermatitis, and this is from a case series. We did a case series of about 300 and odd COVID-19 patients from 6 countries, and when we analyzed the results, and we did a lot of statistical analysis as well, we saw that, of course, fever was one of the main presenting symptoms, but we also saw that with fever, the patients recovered much more easily and required a lot less time to recover from COVID, whereas people who did not develop fever took longer and went into complications and required more remedies to recover than these. So you have, and these are not, you cannot cook these up. These are presented to you as, as they are. You just plot them and you study them. So finally, I just want to touch on the road ahead for us with the ISCH team, what we are planning, where we are. So currently, we are basically concentrating on training classical homeopaths with a penchant for research. We're focusing on them. We're training them about how to write case series and reports. We are continuously collecting well-documented cases, whether positive or negative, but well-documented cases from over 92 countries. We plan at the moment, I've started the work for a systematic review of these publications, which is not yet done so far for homeopathy. We are going to do it now. And then continuous education of homeopaths for good documentation. If they're not ready to write the case reports or they don't feel comfortable, at least document your cases in the right way. Don't just say, the patient was like this, I gave this remedy before, after. This is not acceptable. You need to document, you need to have evidence to talk to your, conventional medicine counterparts. We're trying to create experts in classical homeopathy through education, because unless we have excellent treatment, we don't have excellent evidence. Simple as that. The better the clinicians, the better the evidence. So typically in ISCH, when you give a case and they've gone through the training, there is a good inter-homeopath agreement over which remedies to be given. So that level of standardization is expected of any good therapeutic system. So let's get there and let's do this job together. And that's the sunset in Alonisas. Thank you very much. I hope it was of use, and let's hope we will do something with this information. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mahesh. I'm so sorry about what happened with the hacker. It's really like just takes you by surprise. But nice recovery. And we finished this. I hope we can edit this so that it's one continuous nice presentation, which was so wonderful. Let me see if there's any questions in the chat for us. I don't see any yet, but if anybody has a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself. I see Aza has a question. She raised her hands. Just go ahead and unmute and ask the question.
Yeah, so like in North America, like I find lots of difficulties treating the patients only with homeopathy, because simply, of course, they go to, like the internet and they, like they read, and the bad reputation there. So I have to use with it, like I always use, like nutrition supplements, and it's inevitable. I've tried it with patients to just give homeopathy and wait, it's not working. So I don't know, like if I report those cases, would it like weaken the study, or because I see the patients getting better, although I'm not like I like I see, as you said, like I see things that's probably denoting that homeopathy is working, but definitely they are on supplements at the same time. So I would like to know.
I know. At the moment, my most of my patients are American, so I know what you're talking about. So typically what I do is I tell them right in the beginning that they have to go off supplements, they have to go off all kinds of therapies that they're doing, because they're going to interfere with the homeopathic remedy. Most of them, they do want to, stick to one kind of, because if you're sure that you're going to help, that they're ready to listen to you, but there are some who won't. But when you're documenting, like you cannot present all cases that you treat simply because of this problem. But the ones that you really see are going to respond to homeopathy, you can be a little more insistent, and you can ask them, say, look, you really will do well with homeopathy, but you must give up all this. That's one thing. Second thing is, suppose they are taking supplements and all these other things, you can put technical points, like with this kind of, though the patient was also taking the supplement, what is expected from the supplements, you can research and you can write, and you can bring in the technical point of homeopathic aggravation, movement from deeper to superficial as they have occurred in the case. And this is not appreciated in just supplements, but is a part of the homeopathic treatment process. So you can highlight that and make sure that they understand from the technical point of view that this effect was truly homeopathic and not from the supplements, because you cannot have aggravations, you cannot have the direction of cure. There are certain things that you cannot, for example, that's another reason we stick to, that's possible in India, not in US. We stick to very, very dramatic, drastic cases to present, because simply because they cannot say this is placebo effect and this is from supplements. They cannot do that. Like they cannot say about, gangrene cases. For example, we have a publication on diabetic gangrene where the limb was saved just with homeopathy. That cannot happen with supplements, and it cannot happen even with conventional medicine, leave alone supplements. So we have the luxury of choosing such cases in India, but for you, you have to stick to the technical points and show how it is definitely from homeopathy and not from supplements or any other things that they are using.
Okay, thank you very much.
So Beat, I see you raised your hand. Just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Am I audible, Seema madam?
Yes.
May mouth and tongue syndrome may be happened due to artificial denture, and any case studies regarding this?
Mouth syndrome. Sorry, which syndrome are you talking about?
Mouth and tongue syndrome. Tongue.
Is it Down syndrome?
Okay.
Uh, it
No.
is
He's talking about.
tongue.
Okay.
This.
I have not heard of this syndrome, and
It is.
I don't have any case studies on that.
Okay. It is a kind of some injuries on your tongue as well as on mouth, some eruptions, and due to which your appetite, everything, taste changes.
Okay.
And
No, there are no case studies on that.
second, in cases of anemia, where chronic anemia occurs, if any case study we are giving normally to Ferrum Mat or Ferrum Fast 6x or Ferrum Mat 30, any recoveries and how overuse of this medicine can be avoided with what kind of symptoms are there to identify the over dose of the medicine or over the period of time, so that we should stop that medicine further deteriorating to avoid the further deterioration.
There is no particularly on anemia from our team, but if you look at the CCRH, which is an Indian central body for research in homeopathy, I'm sure there are lots of anemia studies. But the typical in classical homeopathy, we don't stick to ferrum fos and ferrum met. We go the same way as any other case,
Individuality and
analysis.
totality.
Yes, individualization, because simply because there are many remedies that have undernutrition, hemoglobin lowering
Change
effects.
of RB cell shape and size.
Yes. simple remedies, like even calcarea carb can have chronic anemia because of the malnutrition and these things. So it is about understanding where and why the pathology is originating, rather than just the effect, which is the hemoglobin being low. So yeah, that's how
I
we
am
will
there
approach.
to ask about certain case studies and
No, not from our team, but it's there from the
case reports,
CCRH.
as we are discussing on that topic only. So
Yes, there
some
are.
things may be generalized in certain cases, may not be.
Yes.
Otherwise, individuality or
Mm,
constitutional medicine is more necessary or essentiality in homeopathy. Thank you, madam.
yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any more questions from anyone? I have a quick question for you, Seema. When you were talking about plausible time frame for clinical improvement using homeopathy, what would be a plausible time frame? Because we know with homeopathy it can really take some time.
Yes, and that's the reason why I have a problem with conducting RCTs with homeopathy as well. Because what they do typically with RCTs, the randomized control studies, is that they give a remedy, even if it is individualized remedy, and they assess in, say, 6 months maximum. Nobody goes beyond that. 3 months and 6 months, and they assess the response to the remedy within that time frame. And you're forgetting, at this point, you're forgetting that each individual in homeopathy is going to take a different time frame to respond. But when we say that in the monarch table, it's not like that. It is about, for that particular condition, is this time frame for that particular individual, not condition, for that particular individual, is this time frame a plausible time frame? What do I mean? Now you have, this becomes easier if you are conversant with the idea of levels of health, where we understand that a person with low hereditary load, low, not so much of past history, diseases and medications or suppressions, such a person will be responding quite quickly. You expect them to respond quite quickly, say within a month or 2 months, and they'll be fine, or one remedy and they will be fine. Whereas you're going to another case, same diagnosis, but has a lot of familial load, has a lot of suppressions, and these has a lot of history. In such a case, you're expecting a longer time, and so the plausibility of the time frame is basically the individuals and not of the condition. So you have to, based on your knowledge of what you expect the prognosis in a particular individual, is it matching, or it's too long, or it's unrelated.
Okay, so it's case by case. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Aza, you want to admit yourself?
So you mentioned that actually you are working on a systematic review. So I'm interested to know, like, are you presenting the the case studies? Like, can you explain a bit about?
Right. So basically, what we do with systematic reviews is we collect, for example, RCTs. We collect all the data. We have to have the inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, and we have to have some quality control. Only this kind of RCTs we will take. If they don't match the quality standards, we're not going to take this kind of, we make the inclusion exclusion, and we collect the data on that particular, say, treatment, a particular drug for particular condition. In this RCT, this was the data they got. In this RCT, this was the data they got. And you plot the forest plot and all that to see whether the effect is uniformly acceptable as being beneficial or not beneficial. That's what you do with RCT, systematic reviews, and meta-analysis, basically.
Yeah.
But with case reports and series, you cannot do meta-analysis because it's all descriptive. There is no homogeneity. Okay, and we have a wide spectrum of conditions that we're taking. So what are we going to do here is called narrative review. Okay, narrative analysis, not review, narrative analysis. So what we're going to do is we're going to take themes. Okay, so was the benefit in this, was the benefit measured in a certain way? Was it acceptable the way they measured? Was the evidence very clear or not? So you have these parameters for the case reports to, tick and say, and then eventually you analyze the whole thing and you have the outcome measures. The outcome measures will be the evidence from the case reports is of high quality, the grade synthesis that you do for systematic review, same thing. High quality, low quality, or it's very low quality. There are certain parameters. So you basically are not going to say, okay, it worked for this and it worked for that. No, it's basically the quality of evidence in the case reports that are published for homeopathy. Are they strong enough? And if they are strong or if they are weak, for which conditions are they strong? For which conditions they are weak? And whether the methodological quality of the published case reports so far is acceptable. If not, what is the problem with the case reports being? Are they biased? Are they, if they are biased, what exactly is the bias that is coming in? Is there enough negative reporting? So this kind of analysis of the whole case report scenario in homeopathy. If we do that, because we don't have big RCTs and all that, giving us enough evidence, if we do that, we can actually bring forth the lack in homeopathic research and also the strength. So that's the idea here. And we've just started it, but yeah.
So you're not analyzing like for certain disease or certain remedies. You are like really taking the case report themselves,
Reports,
evaluating the okay,
yeah, the study design itself.
I got that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're at the end of our time here, and thank you everybody for such good questions. And thank you so much, Dr. Mahesh, for sharing your expertise and insights with us today. Your work continues to strengthen the scientific credibility of homeopathy and provides us with the practical tools to advance our profession, which is so much needed. I'd also like to thank all of you who joined us for this CHC webinar. We hope you found today's presentation valuable and inspiring for your own practice. I know I did. As a reminder, this session has been recorded and will be available by request. And on behalf of the Council for Homeopathic Certification and the PR Committee, thank you again for being here today and for your continued commitment to professional excellence in classical homeopathy. If you'd like to support the CHC further, consider volunteering on the committee. It's a great way to give back to the profession while also earning your CEUs toward your certification. We look forward to seeing you all at our future webinars. And until then, take care and have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you so much, Dr. Mahesh.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much. Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody.